ECDC On Air,
the podcast of the European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control.
Keeping up to date with European epidemiology.
Hello and welcome to ECDC On Air. I'm your host Andrea, recording from the European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control in Stockholm, Sweden. As summer approaches, more people start getting outdoors, hiking, camping, traveling. This means also that we have more risks of being bitten by ticks and getting diseases if the diseases are present in specific areas. What diseases do ticks carry? And are all ticks dangerous? And also, what do I do if I get bitten by one? To answer these questions and more, I am joined here today by Esther Kukielka-Zunzunegui, who is a vector-borne disease expert at ECDC. She will help us understand everything about ticks and about tick-borne diseases in Europe. Hello, Esther. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Ticks have become a big topic of conversation online, especially when the summer and the spring come. What can you tell us about tick-borne diseases?
Well, so here in Europe, there are two main tick-borne diseases that we care about here at ECDC. One of those is Lyme borreliosis, and that one is the most common vector-borne disease that we have here in Europe. Usually every year we say that it affects around 130,000 people in Europe per year, but that we believe it's an underestimation. Regarding tick-borne encephalitis, we usually refer to it as TBE for its acronym. That one we say that usually we have around 3,000 and 4,000 cases in Europe per year. There are also other diseases, for example, Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever, or CCHF for its acronym. And that one, usually we have only a handful of cases. So those two main ones, Lyme borreliosis and TBE, tick-borne encephalitis, are the ones that we will be talking about today.
When you check online, you can find Lyme disease or Lyme borreliosis. Can you clarify what the difference is between those two terms?
When we're using those terms, we are basically talking about the same thing. But here at ECDC, we prefer to use the term Lyme borreliosis. And just something to explain, the bacteria we're talking about that transmit this disease is a type of bacteria that we call Borrelia.
Okay, these diseases are spread by ticks. Where are the ticks found in Europe?
Unfortunately, they are spread kind of all over. For many, many years already now, the ticks that transmit these diseases, they have been in almost every country in Europe. What we've seen lately is that they started expanding, so a little bit more like in the Nordic countries toward the north, and we think also like in higher elevations.
So you were saying that the ticks are all over Europe. Is it the same also with the diseases?
So the disease seems to be a little bit more localized, like not all over the place. And both of these diseases, we usually find them in Central Europe and in the Nordic countries, and also a little bit in the Northeast. But it doesn't mean, I don't want to say that where you see TBE, you will find Lyme borreliosis, because that's not the case. But that's usually where we find both of these diseases. Central Europe, Nordic countries, and a little bit in the Northeast.
And that naturally brings us to another question. How much does climate change have to do with this?
So it's quite possible that climate change has something to do with it. Summers are becoming warmer and longer, and the winters are becoming the same, also like a bit milder, so warmer than before. And what this does with the tick is like it really expands the season where these ticks are active. That means that if you live in an area where you can find the disease, those ticks have more opportunities, or they are active in a longer period of time, so they can bite you for longer, let's say. So that increases the risk of being exposed to the disease.
Now that we understand why ticks might be a public health concern in Europe and the two diseases that you mentioned, let's go a little bit into the specifics of each one of them. Tell me about Lyme disease. What is it?
Lyme borreliosis is a disease that is caused by a bacteria. That's important because it's going to be a difference with TB, with tick-borne encephalitis, which is transmitted by a virus. And some of the first symptoms that people might see, usually between 7 or 8 people out of 10, develop something that we call erythema migrans, which is a rash, very characteristic rash on the skin, usually where the tick bite you, and it looks like bullseye. like with the darts, like that game. So that's usually one of the first things that people will notice. It doesn't happen in everyone, as I mentioned. So other symptoms are really very general. So they look a little bit like flu-like symptoms. You might develop fever, you might feel tired, you might have like soreness in your body, in the muscles, in the joint, but it's very, very unspecific. And that's one of the things that makes it a bit difficult to finally diagnose, because the symptoms, unless you get that erythema migrans or that specific rash, the symptoms are very, very unspecific at the beginning of the disease.
And then as it progresses, do the symptoms change as well?
Yeah. So this disease, I find it very interesting because it can go in a lot of different ways, depending on many factors. And one of those could be the species of bacteria that you're getting infected with. The symptoms that you're going to present are going to be different. For example, it could be that it's affecting more your neurological system, so your brain. It could be that it's affecting more your heart, Lyme carditis, we call that. It could be that it's affecting more your skin, or maybe it's affecting more your joints. So really, like, the representation or the manifestation of those clinical symptoms is going to be different.
If someone develops Lyme disease, what is next?
So first of all, if you think that you have Lyme disease because you've been bitten by a tick and you're in an area, one of these areas that have like a lot of numbers of cases of Lyme disease, definitely go to your doctor first, right? Talk to them, explain like what your activities have been. Maybe you've been outdoor hiking, or maybe you're working on the forest, something like that. Talk to your doctor, because the sooner they catch the disease, the better outcome you would have. So if you go to the doctor early and they are able to diagnose it soon, they can treat it, and then you will be fine. Like, you won't really necessarily remember about that incident 10 years from now. If you wait a long time, then the consequences in your body can be a little bit harder. And even though antibiotics usually help, you might have some consequences later on in life.
You just said that if you take antibiotics, you might be okay. But I have read online, and I have also talked to friends who have had the disease, who say that, okay, but even after having antibiotics, I have symptoms. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's true. So there's a small percentage of people who, even after being treated with antibiotics, they continue with symptoms for months and even years. That's what we call post-treatment Lyme disease syndrome. So the research evidence that we have right now on that is like, we don't think that the bacteria is still there causing trouble inside your body. So that's why, like, most recent research is saying you don't need to continue treatment. So you don't need to keep using antibiotics for months or years. So what we think that it's happening right now is like your body has been affected by the bacteria. There have been a lot of changes within your body, and your body is overreacting, let's say it in that way, to what happened with the bacteria. Your body is still in fighting mode. Your body is still reacting to what was there before. And it doesn't seem to know how to go back to peace times again. And all those reactions that are happening within your body are the ones causing these symptoms. This doesn't only happen with Lyme borreliosis. Like, there are other infectious diseases that kind of trap your body into that fighting loop, like forever, even if the pathogen is not there anymore. And this is something that we see also with long COVID, right? Like, maybe COVID is not in your body anymore, but you still have that lethargy, like that brain fog, and many of those symptoms that happen also with other diseases that have this problem of chronic symptoms, even when the infection is not there anymore. These type of diseases that have chronic symptomatology, or that you have the symptoms like for a long, long time, even though the pathogen is not there anymore, we group them into a term that we call infection-associated chronic illnesses. So this doesn't only happen for Lyme borreliosis or long COVID. It also happens for other diseases, for example, dengue and chikungunya, that we also work with those diseases here at ECDC. They are also vector-borne diseases.
If most cases are treatable with antibiotics, why are we worried about it?
Yeah, so there's around 10% of people who develop something that we call Lyme neuroborreliosis. And that is when Lyme bacteria affect your central nervous system. It can affect your spinal cord. And depending on what type of nerves are being affected, you have severe consequences. That can be, for example, really, really strong headaches. It could be sensitivity to light, sensitivity to noise. So it really hurts you, like to have light and to hear loud noises, and even small, low noises can really bother you. You can have nerve pain. You can have a stiff neck. So it really depends on what part is being affected, but it really decreases your quality of life a lot, and it can be really, really painful.
We were seeing also a little about facial paralysis. What is that about?
So usually that's a presentation that kids will show, and that is that half of their face is like dropping, we say, and you would see that it's like melting kind of. But again, that's usually more seen in kids, but it's one of the symptoms that you can see with Lyme neuroborreliosis.
Lyme borreliosis is not the only important disease that is monitored in Europe. We have also talked a little bit about tick-borne encephalitis. What is it and what are the symptoms?
Yeah, so this one is transmitted by a virus, whereas Lyme borreliosis, we were talking about a bacteria, right? Also transmitted by ticks. This is why we're having this podcast. And usually the symptoms that you see are coming in two different phases. The first phase is, again, unfortunately, really general symptoms like fever, you're feeling weak, you're feeling tired. And then the second phase comes with neurological symptoms. So not to be confused with Lyme borreliosis, right? When we're talking about Lyme neuroborreliosis, this is a viral disease, a disease that is transmitted by a virus. And it also has that first part of the disease that shows with very general symptoms, and the second part that is shown with neurological symptoms.
So how severe can TB actually become?
Yeah, so it's affecting the central nervous system. So that means that you're probably going to end up hospitalized and receiving some supportive care. Unfortunately, we don't have a specific treatment for TB, for tick-borne encephalitis. And from those who have the disease, who have been infected, around 10% of people experience neurological symptoms for the rest of their life. So it's quite serious.
From what you have been saying, Lyme neuroborreliosis, so the one that affects the central nervous system, and tick-borne encephalitis are quite similar in terms of symptoms, in terms of medical outcomes. But are there any differences between those two?
So Lyme borreliosis is caused by a bacteria. And luckily, fortunately for us, we do have antibiotics that work against Lyme borreliosis. So we can get treated with antibiotics, and that those antibiotics will kill the bacteria that gave you Lyme borreliosis. For TB, we don't have any antivirals that work against it yet. So unfortunately, there is no specific treatment for tick-borne encephalitis. However, something good that we do have against TB is a vaccine. If you get vaccinated, then you are protected against the disease. It's a vaccine that works really, really well. And unfortunately, there is no vaccine for Lyme borreliosis yet.
So let's make this a little bit more practical now. Let's say I went out in the woods for a hike and I came back home and I found that I have a tick. What do I do?
So the first thing you're going to want to do is remove that tick, right? So there are different ways that you can remove it. If you have a specific tick removal tool, use it and follow the instructions, okay? There are different types, so be sure that you're following the instructions for that specific tool. If you don't have any of these specific tools, you might have some tweezers at home, or you can just go to a supermarket and get some. With those tweezers, you need to really go close to the tick in your skin, close the tweezers and pull upwards, so to detach the tick from your skin. And something that you really want to pay attention is you don't want to leave the head of the tick attached in your skin. And that's why it's really important that with the tweezers, you go as close to the skin as you can and then pull up. Once you remove it, you should be washing your skin. You can wash it with water and soap, or you can also apply a little bit of alcohol.
I took it away, I cleaned my skin. What do I do with the animal?
So first, remove the tick in the proper way that we mentioned, and then just ensure that the tick is dead. And there are different ways that you can ensure that death is happening.
Let's say I live in an area where I know there is a Lyme borreliosis or where there is a tick-borne encephalitis. Okay, I went for a hike, I found a tick, I removed it, I disposed of it. What should I think about after that?
Yeah, so I'm a definitely data passion lover. So I would write down in a calendar the day that I found the tick. And then I will check myself in the next few days and weeks for symptoms that I cannot explain. When we are thinking about Lyme borreliosis, again, it's going to be a lot like the beginning of it is going to be like flu-like symptoms, like headache, some pain in your body. And if it's something that you cannot explain, like, I don't know, if my kid is sick with a cold and then I'm developing the same symptoms, I wouldn't really think about it much. But if I don't know where this sickness or this feeling is coming from, I would definitely go to the doctor and talk with them and say, look, I found a tick on this day of the calendar. I remove it, but now I'm feeling this way and I'm concerned of what it could be. So go to the doctor and have an open conversation with them. For TB, it would be similar, right? Because we were talking about the two different phases of the disease, and the first one is also those very general symptoms. So I would also go to the doctor and talk to them.
So far, we have talked about the diseases, we've talked about how to remove the ticks and what to do with them, but we have not talked about prevention, which is probably the most important part. First, before we enter into that, can you tell me more about who are those people who are most at risk of getting a tick-borne disease, like Lyme borreliosis or tick-borne encephalitis?
Now, if you do live in one of these areas where the disease is present, you need to watch out for being in touch with ticks, like getting exposed to ticks. So usually ticks are going to be found in the outdoors, like in the forest or in a park, even in an urban park. You can have ticks there. They live where vegetation is. So if you are exposed to those, then they can bite you and they can transmit the disease if the disease is present. So, for example, the type of people who would be more at risk is in these areas where the disease is present. It would be people who are doing outdoors activities, for example, camping or picking up mushrooms or things like that. Those are the people that should really be careful about ticks.
Okay, but you're talking about people who are outdoors. You say the picking mushrooms or going for hikes or camping or doing like military training in the woods, things like that, where you're in these settings. But what about kids and what about pets? What do we need to look for there?
So for kids, it's a little bit the same type of risk factors, right? Being exposed to a tick. But for kids, like my kids, they're so active and they're so active outdoors and they get into all the bushes and their whole bodies are the same height as the grass, and that's where the ticks are going to be. So I found this tick on my kid's head, like hidden, like underneath all the hair he has. So while an adult like might be walking on the forest, and usually the ticks are going to crawl your legs, and usually they're going to be somewhere around there, kids are completely exposed. So it's not that they're at higher risk because the ticks like kids better, but they are at a risk, like they get into all the bushes and they are the right height to have their whole bodies full of exposure to these plants where the ticks live.
So what do I need to do?
Do check your kids every time that they go outside. My kids know already when they go to the forest, they come home and they say, Mama, we've been in the forest today. Let's check.
Okay, but that's about kids. And what about pets like dogs or cats? I mean, they're about the same height and they are everywhere. What do we need to think?
Exactly the same. Like they can definitely bring ticks at home, and those ticks can go from them to you. Before they attach to the dog, they might decide, okay, I'm gonna bite this human here. So even with your dogs, even if if you're outdoors, like, and you go really on the path and you're not close to a lot of vegetation, if your pet is going through those, when you bring them home, they can bring the ticks with them. So you need to definitely check them as well.
Okay, now I know what to do if I find the tick on my skin. But I could actually prevent that from happening, right? What do I need to do?
So when I hear about prevention and I'm talking about tick-borne diseases, the first thing that I go with is vaccination for TB, for tick-borne encephalitis. The vaccine we have works really well. So if you live in an area where TB is present, please do get vaccinated. Now, for the other diseases, like what we need to do is we need to try to avoid getting bitten by ticks. So how do we do that? There are different ways. One is like you can use insect repellent, right? Another one is like you can use long sleeve and long pants. You can also tuck your pants under the socks, so you put your socks on top of the pants. And other things that you can do, it's after you've been outdoors, when you get back home, just be sure that you're checking for ticks.
Before we close, let's clear up 3 misconceptions. Are you ready?
Go for it.
First one, ticks fall from the trees.
So that's not true. The way ticks find their prey is like they go up to the little leaves or little grass tips, and they wait there with their legs open, like ready for you to pass by and attach to you. That's what we call they're questing. So they go up the leaves and they just wait there for you to pass, but they do not fall from the trees, no.
Second one, you should burn the tick.
I mean, you should burn it once you've removed it if you want, but do not burn the tick when the tick is attached to your skin, because you will be burning your skin and you would have a really bad wound there.
And the last one, every tick bite causes Lyme borreliosis or tick-borne encephalitis.
So that's not true neither. If the tick is not infected itself with any of these pathogens, even if they bite you, they won't be able to transmit the disease, right? Now, let's say that you live in an area that has a lot of TB, like there's a lot of, all the ticks there in that area, they are infected with TB, maybe not all, but a lot of them are infected with TB. If you are vaccinated, you are protected. And this is something that I tell my kid. He's 6 years old and he's in the forest like quite often. So we've already removed quite a few ticks on him. And because he knows where I work and what I'm doing, he's asked me before, Mama, am I going to get sick? And I tell him, look, like you are vaccinated with this TB vaccine. You are not going to be sick with it.
Okay, we can wrap up on this positive note. Thank you very much, Esther.
Thank you.
That's all for today's episode of ECDC On Air. A big thank you to Esther for helping us understand ticks, tick-borne diseases in Europe, and how to protect ourselves. If you want to learn more about tick-borne encephalitis, Lyme disease, and other diseases caused by ticks, visit ecdc.europa.eu. And if you like this episode, don't forget to subscribe, like, or leave us a review. You can also follow ECDC on social media to get the latest information about public health in Europe. Thank you for listening, and until next time, stay safe and stay informed.